Hey, this is Jennifer and Megan. We are two sisters from South Carolina on a mission to discover more about our British grandmother's life in London by reading, researching, and sharing her love letters she wrote during World War II. If you're looking for an interesting, unique perspective on life, love, and London during World War II, then you've found the right place. We will take you through each letter and bring them to life as we have recently traveled to some of the exact places mentioned in these letters. Think of this as a historic love story come to life. So grab your favorite beverage and blanket and prepare to dive in with us. This is the All My Love Lucy podcast. Hey, and welcome back to the All My Love Lucy podcast. We have a brand new guest with us today.
A brand new guest, right? Yeah. I'm so glad to be back. It has been a long time.
I know. I'm so glad you're here. I can't express how happy I am that she's back and sitting here, so I'm not talking to myself.
I've missed being here so much.
I know. Where have you been?
Well, where haven't I been?
I'm just kidding. We won't get too personal. But anyway, as always, we want to start off the podcast by saying thank you for all the love and support from everyone. We're having such a wonderful time doing this podcast, and we hope you're enjoying it too.
And we want to also mention that if you are a first-time listener, we encourage you to go back and start with episode 1 to catch up with all the information we've discussed so far.
Yes, this podcast is more like a series, so you want to start with episode 1 so you don't miss any of the information. It will make more sense to you. And don't forget, we always have a complete, uninterrupted reading of the letter at the end of each episode, so stick around for that. And also, I don't even think Megan knows about this. We'll have a surprise. We're going to do a little contest at the end, so make sure that you stick around and hear the details for that. So
that's exciting.
Yes. So before we get started with the letter, today, the day we're recording this episode, is February 25th, and today is Lucy's birthday. She was born 116 years ago today.
Wow.
So we want to take a moment to recognize that and toast a little tea to her.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. So I was thirsty anyway. I need some.
Unsweet.
It's unsweet. A little surprise there for you, Meg. Okay, so let's get started with letter number 9. We're just really excited to be back together. We actually haven't seen each other in a little while either.
Yeah,
on top of you not being here for this, we've not even seen each other. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we'll get started here with letter number 9.
July 13th, 1944. My darling Jimmy, I received your letter on Tuesday evening, and I am so happy to hear from you and to know that you are fine and fit.
It's so funny that she says that. Fine and fit. And so, as we know, Jimmy and the 50th Signal Battalion had just helped, not too long before this letter, they had just helped conquer Cherbourg, and they were making their way across France. And he evidently had a little bit more time to write to her now. So we see her mentioning a lot more often now that she's gotten letters from him. And so they were making their way across France, and he probably had more time to write as they were kind of in between some major conflicts that they were part of. Now, of course, they were still working really hard and still in danger, but it just seems like he had a little bit more time on his hands. So I wanted to read, well, first of all, this book, I want to mention this again, the book Key to Command. I like mentioning this because it's just such a great book, and it's just chock full of so much information. If you're interested at all in the D-Day events, the events surrounding that, you want to get this book. It's so interesting. It's really, really good. This the author, Michael Godbout, I've been in communication with him. Super nice guy, and he spent like 20 years researching for this book. I don't know if did you know that?
I think I did, yeah.
And he interviews all these veterans, and they share their stories, and it's incredible. It really is incredible. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but I read bits and pieces of it as I go. But in this book, he pulls out an excerpt from a letter a letter that I'm going to read here. I actually found the complete letter in Grandpa Jimmy's things. And so this is it. It's too shiny, but I'm going to read because this is the full letter of part of what I've already read a little bit in one of the most recent episodes. It's kind of lengthy, so get comfortable. But it's worth reading. It's really good. And it's talking about the Battle of Cherbourg that he would have been a part of, helping with this battle. So this is from Major General in the U.S. Army J. Lawton Collins, and this is to the commanding officer of the 50th Signal Battalion. And he says, number one, the Cherbourg campaign, which ended recently with the capture of a city of Cherbourg by the 7th Corps, was an especially difficult operation involving, as it did, a landing on a hostile shore. This is the establishment of a bridgehead and the breakthrough of the enemy position guarding the peninsula and the exploitation of that breakthrough on a road front. These varied and widespread operations could not possibly have been completed successfully in the short period of 3 weeks if the commander had not been able to exercise control over the 5 divisions that were involved. This control was dependent to a great extent on the adequate signal communications which were furnished by the 50th Signal Battalion. So that just talks about the huge role that they played in this Battle of Cherbourg. Number 2, he goes on to say, I wish to convey to you and to each member of your command my deep appreciation of the especially fine communications which you gave to me during this campaign. I have seen your crews working along the roads under all conditions of weather, both day and night, and close behind the front lines. Your crews frequently had to operate over roads which were not completely free of enemy resistance. The very nature of the signalman's work prevents him from giving much thought to his own defense. Operating in small groups, his task calls for high courage on the part of individual men and an assumption of responsibility by non-commissioned officers to an exceptional degree. And number 3, at no time during the campaign was the Corps out of communication with its divisions, which could always be reached by radio, wire, or messenger service. This outstanding success is a tribute to your leadership and that of your subordinate officers and non-commissioned officers, as well as to the personal courage and faithfulness of every man in your organization. I have great confidence that the 50th Signal Battalion will continue to meet every command put upon it in the operations that still lie ahead of us. J. Lawton Collins, Major General, U.S. Army Commanding. So I wanted to take time to read that because that just talks about how much of a vital role that they would have played, that 50th Signal Battalion, in that Battle of Cherbourg that I keep talking about over and over, it seems like.
She goes on to say, I dreamed about you last night. First of all, I was so happy because we were together. And then in my dream, you went away and I received a very formal letter from you. And I was so upset about it all because I thought you did not care for me anymore. And then I woke up and was very thankful to realize it was only a bad dream, except the first part, which was very nice.
Mm-hmm. So probably, I don't know if she probably would have had dreams like this often. Mm-hmm. About how she might receive a letter one day that he's saying, I'm gone. I'm going back to the States. Nice knowing you.
Yeah.
You'd have to think maybe he would change his mind, especially them being away from each other that long.
I couldn't imagine.
No. And I'm sure, she'd have dreams about that, but
I feel like I have dreams about stuff like that all the time.
Oh, I know. Yeah, definitely.
And I wake up and I'm like, thank goodness that wasn't real.
I know. I definitely do.
She goes on to say, well, darling, I'm sorry you have lost your writing paper, but I don't mind what kind of paper you use, so as long as you write. Would you like me to send you a small pad? I will gladly do so if you let me know.
And so, again, we've mentioned this before, but we haven't found any of his letters from this time period. So we do have some starting in, I believe, October but we don't really know what he was saying here to her or what kind of paper he was writing on or anything like that at this point.
The weather is still very dreary, and I wish very much that it would improve, not for me personally, but for all of you over there, as I know it has been against you all the time.
Yeah, and I've definitely read about this, about the weather and how much they were struggling with the weather conditions throughout this whole time. And I read that there was some of the worst weather that Normandy had had since the turn of the century, as they were having these incessant downpours, turning everything over there, all the roads and everything, into mud, and just a really nasty time over there. And then I also read something really interesting that originally, D Day was June 6th, but originally they had planned for that to be on June 5th instead. But because of the weather conditions that were forecast, they had forecasted really, really bad weather, and that wouldn't have been good for them to go forward with this mission. They had to postpone because they needed several conditions to be right in order to invade and storm the beaches there at Normandy. They needed a full moon, of course, for sight purposes. When you're at the beach and there's either a new moon or it's really cloudy, cloud cover, then you know how dark it is at the beach. You can't see anything. And so they would have needed a full moon with kind of clear skies so that they could have the beaches lit up and see if there was any enemy um, traps or anything like that. They would need to see all that. But they also needed a low tide at dawn so that they could see any underwater defenses that the Germans may have installed. And so they'd need to be able to see that, and that a low tide would help them do that. And so June 5th didn't meet any of that criteria. And so they made a decision to delay until the next day. And that proved to be critical in the success of the Allied forces winning,
Wow.
or the Allied forces having success on D-Day.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't either until, reading this letter. She talks about the weather, and then, just looking it up and starting to find all this information. It's really interesting.
Darling, I do not know what else to write about, and only hope you will not find this letter very uninteresting. I could, of course, write to you every day and try to tell you with words how much I love you and miss you, but I think you would get tired of my saying it every day. Anyway, I do not get quite enough leisure to try, as you will see from my weekly program. Monday from 6 p.m. I am fire watching until 6:30 a.m. Tuesday. Tuesday evening I go to bed early.
Okay, so last time I said something about talking more about the fire watching. It's really interesting. And do you remember when we went to St. Paul's Cathedral and the tour guide was talking about the fire watchers and how they kind of helped save the cathedral from, okay.
Oh, yeah.
And that thing on the floor, it said there was some kind of quote on the floor.
Yeah, I think I actually have a picture of it. Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. So it says, "Remember men and women of St. Paul's Watch, who by the grace of God saved this cathedral from destruction in war, 1939 to 1945.
Send me that, and I'll pop it up on the screen too afterwards, and so y'all can see that and see what that looks like. That was really interesting, him talking about that, because and of course I had to go there and say, my grandma, our grandma did that.
Yeah.
Not at the cathedral, but at her, probably on her street. I would think it was somewhere over there. But anyway, so German bombers were dropping a combination of high explosive and incendiary bombs, which were bombs that were filled with highly combustible chemicals like magnesium and phosphorus, or petroleum jelly, which the napalm or whatever. And these were dropped in clusters with the purpose to spread fires. And incendiaries, they would start fires really fast unless they were extinguished immediately. So to combat these incendiaries, civilians were encouraged to volunteer as fire watchers and to draw up rotations with their neighbors to get a schedule as to whose turn it was or whatever. And you can see here what she said. What'd she say? She was from Monday at 6 p.m. until Tuesday at 6:30. So that's 12 and a half hours. 12 and a half hours she was fire watching. That's a long time.
Yeah.
All night like that. I didn't, just now that just hit me that was over 12 hours. And so they would get in these rotations with their neighbors. And then the air raid wardens issued stirrup pumps and trained people how to use them. And before the podcast today, we watched a little video that showed these stirrup pumps. And it's kind of like maybe an old version of a fire extinguisher, but it just was almost like a bicycle pump with a hose that would have some water in it. And this huge, like really long hose, and then this other contraption to it was crazy. We thought about that and thought, how in the world that was. Look it up. I encourage you to look it up. I may post a link to that video that I'm talking about that we watched, so you can just watch the video. It's not long, but it shows exactly what they would have been trained to use, these stirrup pumps and other things. So, but in May of 1942, an issue was made to make it compulsory, or basically kind of required by law, for women to enroll for the fire guard duties. And so women between the ages of 20 to 45 became eligible for duty to do this fire guard. And so this, of course, was an unpaid position, basically volunteer by order. So not really volunteer, but eventually it became compulsory. And it's estimated that by the end of December of 1943, that 6 million people were enrolled in this fire guard organization. And it also says, I did not get exact numbers, but so many of them died during their efforts to control these fires caused by these incendiary bombs. And when I was watching that video, or we were talking about that, how dangerous it would have been, because they expected these people, these just regular people, civilians, to pick up these bombs with these contraptions and run them outside.
Throw sand on them.
And
bury them in the garden.
Yeah. And
I can imagine how scary that must have been.
Scary and just, I don't know. I can't even imagine it. I can't imagine having to do that, but just anyway. So it's very interesting. And she talks about this. We'll see more and more of her letters where she's talking about fire watching. Now, on into 1944 and probably a little past this date of this letter, they stopped having so much, there was not so much of a threat of these incendiary bombs. So probably here too, at the time of this letter, it may not have been quite as dangerous as earlier, like maybe the beginning of the 40s into 41, 42, all that. And so I think it had calmed down a little at this point, but they still had to do it. So quite interesting and something to really think about that she did that. But
she goes on to say, Wednesday evening from 6:45 p.m. to 8:45 p.m., I go to a firm of solicitors in Sackville Street, W1, and do some typing for them. They give me the key so that I can get in, and in this way, I earn some extra money, which I save for my bottom drawer.
So a couple of things here. She mentions here that she goes to a solicitor's firm on Wednesday evenings. And I don't know if I told you this. Peter, which is Marion's great nephew that I've been in contact with about her, he told me that Marion worked at a solicitor's firm.
Oh.
So it makes me wonder if this is where they became friends.
Possibly.
At the solicitor's firm or somewhere along those lines, because Lucy leaves London not long, within 2 years of these letters. So they probably met during this time, or maybe before. Maybe she worked for one before. I don't know. But apparently they probably worked together is what I'm guessing. Also, here again, she mentions the bottom drawer. So in case you missed it, the bottom drawer she's referring to here is basically a hope chest that's set aside for all the things you would need to start a home when you get married. Now, I got to thinking about this, and she knows that she's going to be traveling and moving and having to come across the pond all the way here. And I would not imagine that she would have purchased a lot of new things to have to travel with. So I'm guessing maybe she was saving her money for the bottom drawer things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, I would think that, because later on in her letters, she's talking about getting rid of her things to clean out her flat so that she can quickly leave if she got a got transportation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking here, I don't think she was buying stuff. I think she was probably just saving so that when she got here, she could buy stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
That's my theory. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. Thursday evening, Muriel comes round to see me, and we sit drinking cups of tea and gossip. Not us with our cups of tea.
No way. Sitting around drinking cups of tea and gossiping? No. I do need a sip of tea.
I think I'll pass on that unsweet tea.
I forgot about it being unsweet. Sorry about that. Oh, that's funny. So, as some of you may have seen, we celebrated Lucy's 116th birthday on February 25th. And again, we had the tea here to celebrate that in her honor. So, also for Muriel, we are going to begin our mission to find Muriel's relatives soon. So I'm trying to figure out what her last name was and trying to figure out more information about her. Some of the letters that I have from Muriel are faded really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to have to do some digging, but I believe I can do it.
I believe you can too. You have found so many people and so much information. It is unreal. And I'm so excited about all of it.
It's been great. It's been so much fun and going down all these rabbit trails, finding people and things. And but the best thing when someone that I reach out to and we click that we are connected,
mm-hmm.
and then they start sending me stuff just like that Peter, Marion's great nephew.
Yeah.
When he sent me that picture of Marion and our dad, I about fell out.
That's unbelievable.
I started crying. I was like, oh my word. And then of course the pictures of Grandma, that one is the youngest picture
mm-hmm.
that I've ever seen of her.
Yeah.
With her hair, kind of chopped off. So
they're so beautiful.
I know, and it's just amazing to a total stranger just trying to find somebody connected to somebody, and then you reach out, and then they've got pictures of our grandma, and our dad. It's been wild. It's been a wild ride. So I'm looking forward to even more because there's so much more to uncover, and there's so much more to just discover about all of it. And then the guy that Michael Godbout here, his dad, being on that boat on D-Day with Grandpa Jimmy.
I know.
It's just been mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. So, I don't know. I can't wait to discover more. So we're going to find Muriel's relatives.
Oh, yeah.
Just you wait and see. No doubt.
She goes on to say, Friday, I do my cleaning, and Saturday, I get the shopping. And nearly every Sunday, I write to my darling. The most important job, or rather, I call it my privilege and pleasure, is to write to you as often as I can. Oh,
I know.
So you see, I am fully occupied and thus keep out of mischief, which I hope pleases my darling.
That's so funny that she's writing to him to keep herself out of trouble.
So sweet.
It is sweet.
It is now 11:45 p.m., as Muriel did not leave until 10:30 p.m. I have to get my things ready for my weekend at Tadley, which I told you about in my letter on Tuesday morning.
So Muriel's hanging out late over there.
Yeah, must have a lot of gossip.
So she's hanging out that late, and then Grandma's getting up and doing all this other stuff. And they were having tea. I noticed that too, really late in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That would keep me awake, drinking caffeine that late.
Yeah.
Oh well. Maybe she had to. I don't know. What day did she say they hung out and drank tea? Thursday evening. Okay, so she wouldn't have been fire watching anytime. But I was thinking maybe she's drinking caffeine to keep her up.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure she had to.
Oh, yeah. So a couple things here. We must be missing a letter or two that Lucy wrote in between the last episode and this one, because the last letter she did not mention Tadley.
I noticed that.
Mm-hmm. So either it's not there or it's in another box somewhere. I don't know where it is. But we must be missing a letter or two in between this one and the last one. So, and then also Tadley. we will talk more about Tadley in the next letter, but kind of a brief overview. The place where she stayed, and she tells this in the next letter, was Tadley Court. And this was about 56 miles away from her flat, west of her. And right now, it's unclear why she went there. I don't really understand it. And I think she went alone. And we'll talk more. She gives more details next time about all the stuff there. So I don't know if it was kind of like a retreat place where people just went to get away from the chaos and everything that was going on in London.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but it sounds like she went alone. And at one point during 1944, American soldiers were encamped in Tadley. Not necessarily at Tadley Court at the house where she was staying, but there were a lot of soldiers there. Probably not so much now because they were gone to France.
Mm-hmm.
But we really don't know at this point why she went there, unless, like I said, it was to get away from, she left it several times to get out of the city.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe she was taking a break from all the doodlebug chaos that was going on there.
Yeah, I don't blame her there.
And having to take care of those incendiary bombs.
Oh
and
my gosh.
or
Yep.
I don't know that she ever came across one. Like, I don't know if she ever physically had to do that, but she had to have been trained to do that, and had to carry that. What is it? Stirrup pump? No, it's called something.
Yeah,
some
I
kind of
think
pump.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. So she had to have been trained in that, and yeah. So anyway, she's probably trying to take a break from all that.
Yeah, I would need a break too.
I would too, definitely.
So I shall have to say good night, my dear love, and God bless you and keep you safe. With all my love to you, from your Lucy.
So, as always, we continue on with this journey that Lucy is detailing her life and her longing. She talks about all the time how she's longing to be with him, and we're getting closer and closer to the day they'll be reunited. And next time, like I said, she does detail Tadley Court, where she's going, and so we'll have more about that. And here is the surprise that I didn't tell Megan about beforehand, because I just thought of it last minute. I was like, we should do something fun with this. So she details in the next letter, she details Tadley Court, where she's going to be staying, and we will have the first mention of a book title that she's reading. Do you remember asking about that?
I do, yeah.
Don't say it if you know it. Did I tell you what it was?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
So we have the first mention of a book title that she's reading. We've heard about her going to the plays and the theater and going to see movies, but we have not heard anything about a book. Now, she did talk about going to the library, but she never mentioned a book title until now. So we want y'all to guess what she's reading, and email us or comment on any of our platforms and put your guess there. And the first person to comment or email us with the correct book title is going to get a free t-shirt.
And we have new t-shirts.
We're going to send you a free t-shirt. We'll get your size and everything. We'll mail it to you, free shipping, everything on us if you guess, the first person to guess correctly the book title of what she's reading.
Well, that's fun.
I think that would be fun.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting. A couple of things you can look for are what the books that would have been popular in 1944, in July of 1944. And it may not even been a popular book at that point. She may be reading an old book.
Oh.
So I'm not telling, but it will be fun. And I would love to see if someone gets that correct. So go ahead, and our email is allmylovelucy@gmail.com, or you can comment on our Facebook or comment on our YouTube, however you're watching this, on Podbean, whatever. So go ahead and do that, and we look forward to getting those guesses.
Yeah, I'm excited to see people's answers, and even if it's not the right one, we can still look up the books and see what they're about, and that'd be fun.
And if you don't know what it is, then you can guess too.
I know. I'm like over here racking my brain. I don't think I know.
Yeah, I know what it is because I obviously read, typed this up, but it is something that I would not have guessed. So anyway, it's interesting. it's interesting that she was reading this book. So, and I'll tell you why later. Okay.
All right, so don't miss any of our upcoming episodes as we are discovering more and more about Jimmy and Lucy's life and love story during this time.
Yes. And as always, along with emailing us or commenting about this book title, make sure you're subscribed to all of our avenues of watching our platforms, YouTube. Follow us on our Facebook channel. Make sure you're clicking those buttons for the following and subscribing so you don't miss anything. And we always appreciate you hitting that like button or anything like that. Leave us a review. It helps us. And again, the email address, allmylovelucy@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. So if you'd like to email us also with a question or a comment that you want us to read on the podcast, we would love to do that too. So we are waiting to get those emails.
We always want to say thank y'all so much for joining us and hanging out with us.
Yes.
We truly hope you've enjoyed this episode.
We do. And again, we're so glad Megan is back.
I'm so glad to be back.
so glad.
Pumped.
Yes, so glad. So as promised, as always, we will end with an uninterrupted reading of this letter. So until next time, enjoy. July 13th, 1944. My darling Jimmy, I received your letter on Tuesday evening, and I'm so happy to hear from you and to know you were fine and fit. I dreamed about you last night. First of all, I was so happy because we were together. And then in my dream, you went away, and I received a very formal letter from you. And I was so upset about it all because I thought you did not care for me anymore. And then I woke up and was very thankful to realize it was only a bad dream, except for the first part, which was nice. Well, darling, I'm sorry you have lost your writing paper, but I don't mind what kind of paper you use as long as you write. Would you like me to send you a small pad? I will gladly do so if you let me know. The weather is still very dreary, and I wish very much it would improve, not for me personally, but for all of you over there, as I know it has been against you all the time. Darling, I do not know what else to write about, and only hope you will not find this letter very uninteresting. I could, of course, write to you every day and tell you with words how much I love and miss you, but I think you would get tired of my saying it every day. Anyway, I do not get quite enough leisure to try, as you will see from my weekly program. Monday from 6 p.m., I am fire watching until 6:30 a.m. Tuesday. Tuesday evening, I go to bed early. Wednesday evening from 6:45 p.m. to 8:45 p.m., I go to a firm of solicitors in Sackville Street and do some typing for them. They give me the key so that I can get in, and in this way I can earn some extra money which I save for my bottom drawer. Thursday evening, Muriel comes round to see me, and we sit drinking cups of tea and gossip. Friday I do my cleaning, and Saturday I get the shopping, and nearly every Sunday I write to my darling. The most important job, or rather I call it my privilege and pleasure, is to write to you as often as I can. So you see I am fully occupied and thus keep out of mischief, which I hope pleases my darling. It is now 11:45 p.m. as Muriel did not leave until 10:30 p.m. I have to get my things ready for my weekend at Tadley, which I told you about in my letter on Tuesday morning. So I shall have to say good night, my dear. Love and God bless you and keep you safe, with all my love to you, from your Lucy. If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode, and for that, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We truly hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you'll return for the next episode of the All My Love Lucy podcast.